Hey guys, Mike and Chess here. Today I'm going to give you a Danish Gambit repertoire for white, and yeah, I'm going to give you just kind of like the gist of the lines and the ideas that you can look for. It's not going to be like super theory intensive, and I think it'll work all the way from beginner all the way up to like 1900, 2000, something like that. And I don't think these are the kind of positions you have to put a ton of like computer time into, really. It's just you kind of get the core of the position, and like you study it, you work with it on your own, and then once you get that position, it's just kind of the best player wins that position. And one of the reasons why I like the Danish Gambit for white is it's rather forcing. Black has to react to it, and there are ways where even if black declines it, white gets a totally playable position. And I think whether accepted or declined or completely ignored, I think white gets a playable position in all of the lines. So I'm going to start you off here, and these are all games that I played. So this is the starting position of the Danish Gambit accepted. So, and here we have probably the most classical way to give some of the material back. So, and it's important to remember here that this doesn't just win a queen, because bishop b4 and the rook hits the queen. So you have to block here. And then you get this position. And in this position, I think my opponent mouse slipped rook f8, knight f3, and rook... No, sorry, it wasn't in this position. But in this position, a lot of players are going to say that because of this bishop here and this bishop here, this is a draw-esque position, which I couldn't agree with or disagree with more, because like there's still tons of minor pieces and rooks on the board, and both sides can get like mated in this position, or like you can lose an endgame. And like even if white really wanted to like avoid that, he could play something like bishop takes f6. So, and then we have a very interesting 3 versus 1 potential endgame versus a 4 versus 2 endgame. And I think that's the kind of position where the better player wins regardless of the color. So I think this is a good way for players of any level to practice their potential queenless middle games or potential end games. So even if you want to fight out like bishops opposite color middle games, I think it's really good. So and okay, so here queen e7 is a move you're going to see sometimes. But I think maybe at the lower levels, like maybe like 1000, something like that, like these players like this, like, oh, I'm gonna make a threat with queen b4 and try and like win your material. But when somebody makes a basic threat like that, you should just parry it with basic development. And then queen b4 here. Anyways, like trying to hit both your pieces, even just a basic move like bishop b3. It's important that I want to tell a lot of beginners that don't make a threat just for the sake of making a threat. So like in this position, so for example, like queen d5, it's like, yay, like we have black can't take on b2 because of queen f7, king d8, and queen f8 mate. But that threat is like simply parried by a move like knight h6. and the threat is gone, and now, for example, c6 or d6 could come. Not that, but yeah. So, and again, just black broke kind of opening principles again with queen e7, and here he played more standard knight c6. In here, you kind of saw me breaking opening principle. I played knight to e2, and if ever you're unsure of where your knight goes on e2 or f3, just go to f3, more towards the center, a little bit more aggressive. So you're going to see this position a lot if you play the Danish. So, and here, so knight f3 is kind of our first, like, kind of trappy move. So, not trappy, like, it's a good move, and it's a developing move. So, and there is a trap within it. So, black can't play knight takes e4 because there's a win here for white. And I'll give you a couple seconds, see, maybe you can pause the video, see if you can find the win. And the win is knight to e5. So interfering the rook from the knight's defense. So when the king moves, we take the other knight. And if knight c6, thinking that if here black has this, well, white doesn't have to oblige. He can play f4, just guarding his knight. And then he can move his other knight, say, out of the way to g3. And then white can castle and he's over piece. So it's always good to be aware of that. And the other thing to remember in this position, say if black plays bishop e6, knight g5, say king f8, and kind of getting the bishop here is always kind of a good thing too, because it's an open position, so you can argue that a bishop is better than a knight in an open position. Okay, so bishop b4, it's the most played move on Lee Chess. I didn't check chess.com, but I would imagine it's similar. Most played move, at least in like non-grandmaster games. So you're going to see this a lot, probably in under 2,000 games. There's a few moves here. So there's king f1, which I don't really recommend. I'll show that a little bit later. There's also knight d2, which I also like. It's not a terrible move, but I think knight c3 is by far the best move because it's just the most active square for the knight. So here in this game, my opponent played queen f6, and generally these kind of moves should just lead to disaster, and you don't really have to do anything super special to punish moves like this. Like, it is important to take note that black is making a threat, so you just have to parry that threat. So you can play a move like queen b3, which guards the knight, and now black's bishop is hanging, so knight c6 and knight f3, and next white's gonna get ready to castle. So say a move like knight e7, castles, and get ready for knight d5, and white has a totally satisfactory position. Okay, so standard position, and sometimes you'll see d6 as a way for black to try and get his light squared bishop out instead of the dark squared bishop. He's going to try and maybe aim for more kind of like this standard development, and you just aim for regular development. And if black tries to blunt your light squared bishop, it's no worries. You just take, and so there's queen b3 here hitting 2 pawns. Black can try and save them, and already white can like get into the position. And, or even stronger is like knight e4, just playing super actively. So, and like this is already a very comfortable position. So that line is of no concern. Okay, I can ignore that this is an extra game. See, you see this line a lot. So knight f3, c5, castles, and here, yeah, we see myself actually making this kind of positionally bad move. I have the dark squared bishop here hitting the knight, and like white's position is probably just slightly preferable. So even probably a really solid move like f3, or even rook e1, and then I could even probably follow it up with a move like f4 and e5. e5 might be a little suspect in this position. You generally don't want to put pawns on the same square as your bishop. So, but yeah, so I kind of played poorly here, but I got an okay position. Okay, so this is one of the kind of tamer responses from black. It's not really good taking. White just gets the bishop pair, and then you can just kind of play regularly. See, I think there's even a stronger move, bishop b4. Oh yeah, I think bishop b4, knight d2 is even stronger. So if they're gonna play this way, they have to play knight f6 to like really maintain equality. The difference being that if here, knight d2, bishop takes, queen takes, and knight f6, and there's I don't think there's anything particularly special about black's position here. Yeah, white's already significantly better with a move like queen g5. And yes, I had to turn on the engine quickly to see that move, but sometimes you do have to pay attention to move orders, so knight f6 is the most common move here. And sometimes it's important to know why, because you might see it from time to time. And yeah, knight f3. So instead, I played knight f3 in this game. When you have a position where d6 isn't on the board, knight c6 isn't on the board either, here you can play e5. And it's because the knight doesn't really have a good place to go, and black can't classically break with d5 either because of takes, queen takes, king takes, and pawn takes, and you're forking the bishop and the knight. And even in this position, I don't think this is really that good, because even say rook g8 trying to take this pawn, we can castle king here and play a move like knight d5. And here you see again black trying this, but playing queen e7 instead. Here you just play queen e2. And here, again, the black knight is left with no real good squares, and he's got to play a move like knight g8. And white's just doing fine here with a moves like knight f3. And it's even interesting that knight h3 is a move. And there might be ideas of knight f4 and knight d5, getting the knight really active. So standard position. And there is the one trick here of takes, and I think I did show that, but it's something to watch out for black and for white to be aware of. So just because like white stopped this knight e5 idea doesn't mean that, or black stopped knight e5 doesn't mean he can just take the pawn. So to show that quickly again, knight g5. So, and you're going to see this line a lot if you play the Danish. So, and here, yeah, it's interesting. I think my opponent mouse slipped with, yeah, this was the game where he mouse slipped from f8 and went to e8, and black still had a relatively okay position. It shows that black's position is solid enough that even on a mouse slip online, or even if your opponent plays rook f8, e8, which I doubt you'd see in a real game, but it just tells you that black's position's solid and white's not going to just generally crush him, which you shouldn't be looking for in most positions anyways. So most openings that you play, regardless, you're not just going to crush your opponent unless you know a ridiculous amount of theory, and they don't. So I think at lower levels, even all the way up to 1800, you're just looking to get like a playable position. Even if you're down a pawn, just try to maintain like super active pieces and play with a plan, and just be aware that you're not hanging pieces. And I think that's a good strategy for a lot of like beginners and players under 1500 to rapidly improve. So bishop b4, and yeah, I quickly talked about king f1 and knight d2, and I'm always going to recommend knight c3. Here knight f6. So here it is important to know that there's only one good move in this position, and it's important to know that e5 is not a good move due to the classic kind of d5 break, and it's going to run into, say, e takes f6, and even a move like queen f6, and you can't stop both of these threats. So if, say, rook c1 guarding your knight, there's still pawn takes, and say queen e2, bishop e6, and black's still getting the better of this position. So it's important to be aware that if you're going to play e5, that black can't just play d5. So the only move to maintain like a playable position, you must always play queen b3 in this position. And generally black should take on c3 with the bishop, and then you take with the queen. Notice that you can't really take here because queen takes g7, and this is just losing for black. And knight c6 runs into bishop takes f7. So see, here the knight has no support, so we play e5. It's when the knight has no support and black can't break with d5. So, and if knight g8, then it's best just to continue with natural development. What I don't want you to make, what I don't want you to do is to play moves like queen b3, going, oh, I'm threatening f7, when black can just play a move like knight h6, developing and like naturally parrying that move. So, yeah. And here, it's also important in this position to note that you can't get away with bishop takes f7, because king takes f7 is really strong. And it's also because of the classic idea of d5 just breaking in the center. Black's king is going to be more safe in this position. So queen takes, knight c6, so developing for free. So queen has to move, and then black can just take this pawn. And then rook e8 is coming, followed by king g8, and black's just for preference. So remember queen b3. I'm going to drill this because I missed this queen b3 idea a few times. So I kept trying to play like things like knight f3 and e5, and they're all just not good. So you have to play queen b3 in this position. So it's the only idea, and this is the one you really have to know. And it's not that long; it's 7 moves. So I think most players can, get it stuck in their brain that this is a kind of a critical position on move 7. Here we're seeing that endgame again, and I know some of you might be like, why aren't these all clumped together? Like, why aren't all these queenless middle games clumped together? And maybe that's a valid point, but I also think that it's kind of good to see like the same position over multiple different times, just because you're making your brain work in different ways, in my opinion. It's like, okay, I just saw this variation, and then I saw this variation. Oh, now I'm seeing this again, and I think your brain just has to work a little bit harder to remember the position, which is, I think, good for like practicing for classical play or even online play. It's like, oh, I've seen this position 5 or 6 different times when I was training, and I didn't see it like all within a 5-minute go. I saw it over 3 different times. So, and yeah, here again, I still don't buy into the bishop's opposite color Josh position. I think the better player can win. So I think you can just castle in this position. White or black can play, say, rook e8 or something like that. And again, the better player is going to win. So each player has 3 minor pieces and 2 rooks. Like, why can't you win a couple pawns or try to mate your opponent or win an endgame? And it's all good for experience. And yeah, you maybe don't take any draws, especially in your blitz games and your slow games online, or active games, practice games. Just don't take draws in general. I think it's a really good mindset to have. It's just, I'm going to play these out to the bitter end, just for the experience that it can pay off dividends later on. Just, it's like, oh, I'm comfortable playing these endgames now. I've played maybe 10, 20, 30 games in this endgame or this queenless position, and I'm very comfortable in trying to grind my opponent down, even if he is 200 or 300 points higher rated than me, because I've just looked at it. So And here's another variation where, yeah, they play king f1, and it is a line. I don't think it's considered very good anymore, and I did play it, and my opponent played knight f6, and I was thinking, oh, queen b3, which was the exact wrong moment to play queen b3. I think the only move here might be knight c3, or maybe knight f3. I'm not even sure, so I have to check what the engine says, because I didn't put it in my notes. Already the computer wants to play e5 and d5. And see this d5 again, breaking classical principles. Or sorry, following classical principles. Whereas, like white's king's in the middle. So just rip open the position and just be like, yeah, I'm better as black. So I don't recommend this. Just follow the standard knight c3 stuff. So I think this setup from black is the most harmless. I don't think white can... It's almost impossible for white to get a bad position, at least in my opinion. Knight f3 and knight e2 are both pretty good. So knight e2 and knight f6, and the computer is just showing zeros kind of all the way around. I think you can just castle here, and the idea being that it takes, and you're just going to put the knight on d5 and get a very aggressive position. See again. And here I played knight g5, which kind of breaks some opening principles. Kind of like maybe just playing a move like rook e1, and if takes, you still have this trick, so black still can't play here because of rook e4. This is a trick to always be mindful of. And even if, say, rook d8, like white gets a comfortable position. So, or say black plays, say a nothing move like a6, which is still fine. You can just play rook d1 and just put your rooks in the middle and just play again. And that's a lot of what I'm just aiming to try and get a lot of new players and lower rated players who are maybe trying to get over a hump of 13, 14, 1500 or 1600. Just get a position. Don't worry about being down a pawn. Just activate all your pieces, and yeah, the tactics will flow from a good position. And even in positions where you're down pawns, if you have active pieces, that counts for a lot. See here, I still didn't play queen b3, and yeah, and I got duly punished for it. Like here, I'm just down 2 pawns, really for nothing. So d5, good classical break. So again, yeah, guys, this is the critical. Sorry, right here, this is critical. Queen b3. So very important. Cannot stress it enough. And I think we are going to get the same position. And here, like, your opponent makes just this, like, a silly threat, and you can just castle. And don't even know why I showed that one. So here's another. So I showed you this idea of knight f3. and with the knight g5 ideas. If you don't like that, you can play f3 here. It's a much more solid approach. And you just play a game. Play like bishop e6, knight e2, knight c6, and just castle. And just play a game. Try to, even if you like grinding your opponent out for 50, 60 moves, why not? So maybe you like that style of game. Nothing wrong with that. And I think it's a good skill to sometimes get into the habit of, I'm just going to try and wear you down in a equal position or slightly better position. So and here's a little bit of, here is a game I played knight d2, and again recommending knight c3, and e5, d5, and it's just me not getting great position. So just, this is the other one. Just always play knight c3, and if knight f6, what do we play? Queen b3. Always, always, always. These are the kind of the only two like ones you should always kind of go for, these two setups. And here you can see me allowing this classic strike. Again, actually here my opponent played knight e4. And there's a little tactic here. Can you spot it? Bishop takes f7. King takes queen d5. And say king e8, queen takes e4, and black has lost our right to castle. So, and that's kind of our compensation. And here we're going to look at some of the declined lines, because obviously black is not forced to take. So, and that's it. Yeah, if they play d5, you'll see that a lot. Here, I don't recommend taking, which is totally playable. I always prefer just developing a piece. Knight f3, bishop g4, bishop e2. And here they have this semi-annoying move, but just take, and I believe that this position is totally playable for white. A lot of players are going to be like, well, I have the double isolated pawns, but they're only weak if they can be attacked and they're on a file that isn't open, and you have the bishop pair. So you have every right to play for a win in this position as black, and I believe that the better player wins this position. So you shouldn't just lose because you got a worse pawn structure on move 9. Like maybe that happened, you lose on move 70 because you missed something, or you didn't play the best moves at some point. But there's nothing wrong with trying to win this with white. Like maybe it's a little unambitious, but absolutely playable. And again, sometimes that's all you're looking for. You don't need like 30 moves of theory to like try and like crush your opponent. I think a lot of theory is overrated. Just get a position and get one that's just comfortable for you and active. And yeah, I hope the Danish is definitely that. So, and then there is, so this line, so if they don't play bishop g4, they play knight c6, which is also very common. I want to point out that bishop g4, this is the most common move. So there is a high chance that you will see this position a lot. So, and you can also see knight c6. And then you should take bishop b4, knight c3, bishop g4, and always deal with this pin just by breaking the pin. And the only real theory you need to know in this position is you takes, queen e2, takes, castles, and bishop e3. And again, it's just a game. So, and the better player wins here. So, and oops, d4, e2. Yeah, we looked at this line. Yeah, and I think, yeah, all of these lines are generally okay for white. And then kind of last but not least, you're going to kind of run into this. And like, what if white doesn't do anything? Or sorry, what if black doesn't do anything? Just kind of sits. Well, you can go back into a scotch if you want. Or you can kind of bring it back into your own territory. Play d takes e5, and if knight takes, you can play f4, knight c6, and knight f3, and just get a very open position. And that's what you want. Just a nice open position where you can just develop your pieces and just play a game. And bishop b4, I recommend just develop naturally. Don't be scared of your pawn structure ever really getting damaged. Either getting the bishop pair for it, like generally the bishop pair is worth the concession of pawn structure. So I think a lot of lower rated players put too much fear into their pawn structure being damaged. So when they can get the bishop pair and try to aim for activity. So aiming for active piece play, I think will improve a lot of players' chess playing ability and just their ability to improve their attacking play. So I think it's something they should aim for. And there was one other interesting position that I forgot to put in, but in this position, if they try queen e7, you can, there's an interesting gambit here where you go queen e4, bishop e3, knight c6, knight c3, bishop b4, knight f3, and here, like, you're just gonna develop all your pieces. So again, you just sack the pawn and you just go for it. And yeah, it's an interesting line. I've had good results with this against really strong players, and yeah, so that's kind of the Danish Gambit, very basic overview of it. I believe it's, yeah, Gotham Chess has a really good video on the Danish Gambit that I would recommend everyone check out, as does Remote Chess Academy, and I highly recommend checking those videos out on the Danish Gambit. This is just to give you guys all a very brief overview, and that I highly recommend it. And I'm going to bring out more videos on other openings that I think that can fit into a beginner repertoire. So things that you'll see against, like lines against the Sicilian defense, against the French, against the Perk. And it won't be all opening stuff that I'm going to post on either. We'll do classic middle game stuff, end game stuff, and if there's anything you guys want a video about, just leave it in the comments and I'll do my best to help you out. Thank you all for watching and have a good day.